So my name's Tom Heintz, in case you don't know. We'll start this meeting tonight. We wanted to have a talk about energy releases. So basically what we did last week was we went over how muscle testing works. And hopefully that was helpful to see the different ways of doing it, as far as different formats of using your hands, thumbs, little fingers. I know that I've sat with 4 of you, and we've actually determined which is the easiest or the best for you to be doing the muscle testing. So that's that. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you ever have a situation where you need to know that, it doesn't take very long. We can do that in probably less than 5 minutes. We'll just set up a time when we're already talking, or it wouldn't take much to try and figure out what the best way is for you. But you need to remember that what is going on in muscle testing is your actual body reading the biometrics of the situation. It could be, if you're doing a lie detector test, it reads your biometrics, your body, heart rate, your blood pressure, all that kind of fun stuff. But when you're doing muscle testing, you're picking up from the subconscious, and it's already reading what's going on with you or your client. So that's the cool thing about it, is it can actually switch over. Now, the question came up, how do we actually release energies when we're actually working with somebody? And I think that's an important thing to remember. So the idea behind this whole thing, I'll just give you the secret, quite frankly, and I guess I will on the next slide here. Let's go over these first. When we're taught through Dr. Nelson's versions, we use magnets. So you say you still can see me?
Yes.
Okay, so if my phone was a magnet, what we're doing is we're working with the governing meridian, and it starts about here at the top of your lip and goes up over your top of your head and goes down to your tailbone, and that is the governing meridian of your acupuncture. So when you take the magnet, and if you're doing it by yourself, which is most of the time, you're doing proxy stuff, you're going to actually put it over the top of your head. And if you're working with somebody, and then you're going to run it down their back. And that's basically the easiest way to do it with a magnet. Now, I purchased a whole bunch of expensive Nikon magnets when I first started doing this, thinking in my head that that was the only way it would work. Well, I was wrong. And every time I learn something new, it's kind of an exciting thing, because I need less and less other things to do what I need to do when I'm doing my work, which is really handy. And I'm in the process of actually miniaturizing my big book. I've got that big book with the sheet protectors in. I've reduced it to half size, and I'm trying to convert all my charts so I don't have to worry about how do I transport that when I'm like on the road right now. But with the magnets, it's very powerful. You don't need a special magnet. You can just grab one off the refrigerator. A lot of times, for those people who still get phone books, sometimes there's a magnet glued to the front of the phone book. My wife used to work for it's an ER type of emergency room place, and they're always advertising, and they had all these magnets made up. Well, they make perfect use of, in fact, I don't have that with me, perfect use for us doing this work, because it's really simple, it's flexible, and it's easy to work. One of the things that I kind of felt uncomfortable with by using the magnets and going over the top of my head on that governing meridian was, you can imagine what that looks like when you're on a plane trying to do a session for somebody. And you got this weirdo with the magnet going over the top of his head. A magnet, there's enough electricity also in your fingers that you can literally do that same type of thing. So you're like casually trying to not be nonchalant, but why does he keep doing it? Has he got this nervous thing going on? When I went to one of Dr. Nelson's seminars, I learned from a lady that was sitting next to me. She was from Hong Kong, and she was, not only was she doing the muscle testing sitting down using the sway test, she's always moving, and she was testing all the time. And then what I noticed is that she was using her hand. Can you see my hand? I'm assuming you can. So basically, if you look at your hand, and if you look at reflexology, this is your governing meridian. So you got your middle finger to your wrist, and then these two right here are your arms, and these are your legs. So you can actually sit there with your magnet, if you're going to use a magnet, or your fingers, and you can just run your fingers down the governing meridian. So it's from fingertip to my wrist. And of course, I would always take everything off. I would not wear a watch or anything like that because it kept hitting it. And that I thought was the best ever. And so what I did was I talked to Josh Nelson. I don't know if you know who Josh is, but that's Dr. Nelson's kind of nephew. It's kind of like one removed. And Josh says, I got one better for you. And of course, I'm all ears when Josh tells me something. And so he says, I just tap. And I'm going, well, you've heard of tap, EFT, that kind of thing. And you always wonder, well, why not? And so he actually, if this was the table, let's use this here as my table. So I got my phone here, and he just taps. That's all he does. And so when he's doing a release, he just taps. Now I have a tendency, so this is what I do now. I actually have adopted this. So I tap when I'm releasing. Now, Dr. Nelson used to have, I don't know if you remember, but when he installs something, he can actually release going up or down. And if you have a question, you can always ask the body, which way should I go when I'm trying to install something? Say it's a shield, or you're trying to give energies back to a person. And there's a couple of reasons why you would. And I don't worry about it anymore. I just tap. And it's all here, folks. It's all through intention.
What are you tapping?
I am just tapping on whatever happens to be around. So when I tap, I actually use just these two fingers usually. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm just tapping these two fingers, and I'm not tapping on any person or anything. I'm just tapping on the table. I'm tapping on my book. You got to remember, it's all here. It's all through intention. There's a book out there. It's called The Physics of God, and it talks about quantum technologies. And it talks about the power of the mind. And so a lot of times, there's two different churches. Let's put it this way. There's the Church of Science, when most scientists, they just say, no, if there's no such thing as God, there's this energy out there. Everything has to be proved scientifically. And then there's the church of, you've got God involved with it. And this particular guy, he says there's a huge reason why you would want to include God in this, because of the order. And you got people like Einstein who knew there was something else out there. There's a lot of different people out there that believe in that. Well, when you are, and I'm doing the same thing I did before, I get involved in something and I forget my main purpose here. Intention, that's what it was. Yeah, so basically what they did, they had this one guy who set up a blind test. And it was a matter of having the exact same stuff happen. He did this over 20 years at a university, and he had different people come in. And what they did was they looked at the influence of the mind. So all they did was have somebody literally try to change the flow of these metal steel balls or this water, things like that, so that they could actually measure it. And what they found is that at least 80% of it, there was an actual change. They could manipulate a little bit of a change, and some people were better than others in doing this, as far as what the flow would be. Even these steel balls, as far as going down into certain pockets and things like that, which I thought, wow, I've always, I don't know about you, but sometimes I just look at something and I think, come to me. I want to be able to move it with my kinetic capabilities. And I always wonder, if maybe in the afterlife or something like that, I can see how close was I to actually moving that object. I think that we influence things a lot with our mind that we just don't realize the capability. And usually the limitations are what you believe can happen. So remember Napoleon Hill, what is it? Anything that you can conceive and believe, you can achieve. But you got to have the belief part in there. There's just a lot of different things going on. So I want to make sure that you understand that the first time I ever tried to do this, and I was sitting there at a camp out, I had an emergency call. Somebody had said, I'm in a really bad way. I got headaches. I can't seem to get rid of them. Can you help me? And I'm sitting there surrounded by these guys. Okay, so here's the typical guy thing. And, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I got my phone with the app. I can do the work, but how can I do the release? And so I thought, I'll just do it in my head. So I was pretending that I was rolling that magnet over my head. At that time, that's how I did it. And I found that, then I checked and I said, so how you doing? She says, oh, so much better. Thank you for releasing that. And I'm thinking, okay, that works. So once again, intention is a big part of it. So is this the only way to release energies? Absolutely not. There's a number of different ways that you can do that. And that's why I put the peace process down here also. You can actually look up that peace process on the internet and Google it, and it's put together by a couple of different people. There's one with 7 different ways of doing it. Christian Mickelson uses it as if it's his own, and that's the one that I've got in my book because it's easy and small. I can go down through the process. And then there's other ones that have 10 pieces. But ultimately, what we're dealing with is when you have something that's going on, turmoil. This is for self-healing. And I suppose you could do this for somebody else too. If you're tapped into them, you can locate where the turmoil is in that part of the body. And if you just go in, and it's like, here's the example I would use. If you've got a teenager that's being really just, doing their thing, and they're just being nasty, and they just don't want to listen to mom and dad. Well, if the mom and dad, or the mom, usually it's more fun if you got 2 of you, you just come in on either side of them and you just hug them in the middle. And they're fighting to get out. And they just say, oh, we love you. We just want you to know that we just really care about you. And that's why we're as mean as we are, and we just love you, love you, love you. And they're going to squirm and squirm and squirm. And pretty soon they just give up. Now, that's exactly what happens in the peace process. You go after that part inside of you that's in turmoil. And then you just wrap around with unconditional love. Now, a lot of times we just try to think of something else so we can kind of forget it, but that's not the issue. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be gone in and just loved. This is like your shadow. And if you've had sessions with me where we've had the shadow, I use the story of my daughter, who at that time, she had a 3-year-old daughter named Ashlyn. And Ashlyn came in when I was down there visiting with her, and we were in the kitchen, and my daughter bakes cakes, and I used to be a chef, so we have a lot of great conversations, and we were really into something. And Ashlyn comes running in, and she goes up and she grabs hold of her mom's pant leg and goes, "Mom, mom, 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 mom." And I'm thinking, this could be interesting. Let's see what happens here. And I thought, for sure what she was going to tell Ashlyn was, Ashlyn, Grandpa and Mommy are talking. Go play in your room. I'll come see you later. Basically, go away. And that didn't happen. What she did was she looked at her. She stopped, looked down at her, and she said, "Hi, Ashlyn. What do you need?" And Ashlyn just looked up at her and said, "Hi." And she ran off, and she was happy. The thing is that a lot of times it's a matter of being recognized. So when you're dealing with different things in here, when you find and you discover things using muscle testing, what is going on? We've had some really, really good sessions in this last week or so where I've just introduced using a lot more what I call despair anchors or despair statements, where your body at one particular time had an issue and it was a negative statement. It doesn't even have to be true. In fact, 90% of the time it's not true, but it's like, I deserve to be alone, or no one wants me around, or whatever. And it could have been when you were 5 years old and that statement's still going. But once we recognize it, a lot of times through intention, we can release that energy. That's one way of doing it. EFT works. Another thing is to write it out. Okay, so if you're writing things out, a lot of times what they do is they'll say, write out what you're feeling right now, put it on a piece of paper. Now you fold it up and you burn it. It gets rid of it. Or you imagine that you're putting all those things into a boat and you send it out into the big lake, and then you just sink it. Basically what you're doing is you're acknowledging it, you're sending it out, and you're releasing it. So when I release something from somebody, there's no doubt in my mind what's going on. So let's see, I think the next one. What actually happens during a release? What happens to that energy? Well, the subconscious, you got to remember, the subconscious is in charge. And when I go to release this, it's not me that's doing the release. That's the thing you got to remember, is that it's not you that's actually doing. You just work there. And I say that sometimes. I just work here. Dr. Nelson says that a lot. And what happens is I get permission when I start working on somebody. Before I even start, I ask for permission, and I usually say a prayer, and I'm involving the subconscious and saying, please let me know what happened, and then let me know what you're willing to release. The subconscious will not release anything until it's ready to be released. And usually what it's trying to do is it's trying to bring you up to speed because you probably have a wrong paradigm of what's going on. So I always ask when I identify something, I said, do we need to know more? And if the body says no, unless you want to know more, if you do, then we dig in. But if the body says yes, I don't know, almost everybody here has had an opportunity where when I'm working with somebody, it just won't go. It just keeps saying, I got to know more. I got to know more. And I'm digging and I'm digging and I'm like, I don't know your background. How many people have been surprised with where we've ended up? You think about that, and I don't have anybody doing background checks on you to know what's going on, but your subconscious is trying to change your paradigm of what actually is going on. And when that happens, then it says, okay, now we can get rid of it. So the subconscious is in charge. Now, sometimes it will skip a person. And the release, not the subconscious, but although the subconscious, it will determine a lot of things. Like sometimes I'll say, I go through my little thing. Is this family? Is this a friend? Is this an enemy? Is this a stranger? Is this a coworker? And there's my little things that I go through. And sometimes I says, is it a family member? No. Is it a stranger? Is it an enemy? Yeah. And then you find out it's their stepdad, or it could be their father, their biological father. And what it was is the subconscious says, he's not a family member. And so and once you identify it that way, then you can come back. But I've had that happen. But one of the interesting things, for example, in my family, my wife's ex-husband, I cannot release anything at all from him. Doesn't matter. And of course, her children, they've inherited things from their dad, and they inherited things from their grandma, and it may go back many generations. Everybody but their dad allows me to release the energy. And I don't know if it's because he hates me or if I know he doesn't like me, which is fine. I don't care. But the thing is, and I don't mind releasing stuff from him, but I am not able to release it. And sometimes it comes back and says, no, that wasn't released from him. So just be aware that can happen. And it's kind of weird when it does, but there are certain people who are not willing yet to release that. Now, sometimes when I do this, and it goes back multiple generations, my room gets warm. You all know that. I turn the fan on, and I'll say, okay, we got something family going on here. We got a lot of heat in the room. And so when we do that, and sometimes I ask, is everybody here? Not usually. I mean, usually you'll get most of them. Some of them aren't in a spot where they can have that released yet. Or actually, they're open to the release, but they're not always there to witness the release. They come because this is a very special thing. So a lot of times people say, does this really happen? Oh yeah, because that was a splashy drink. Okay, so anyway, what happens is I can almost feel them touch me as they leave. Everybody's a little bit different in how they feel things, but I know that they're there, and sometimes it's kind of fun to see who is there. Okay, you set who will be affected by the release. Okay, that's kind of the same thing too. You can, if you forget somebody, Dr. Nelson, we were at a conference or a training seminar down in Austin not too long ago, and he automatically has everybody released and from all directions. So I call, we've got inherited, it'd go from mom to dad, mom to her mom type thing. So it's a generational thing, so biological. And then I ask, is that everybody? And sometimes it says no. And it might be the siblings. It might be your aunts and uncles. And I ask, does it go sideways? Now, I think Dr. Nelson is just predetermined that it's going to be released from everybody. Okay, and so if that's the case, then it probably is released from everybody. I had a guy come to me who is actually a practitioner for another modality. He works with multiple personality disorders, and he still uses muscle testing to be able to determine what's going on. And when he came to me, he let me do, and this is a couple years ago, and he said, yeah, I can't test. And I said, well, I'm thinking, of course I can do this. Dr. Nelson's got this great program. It does everything. And so I went ahead and I worked on him, and I said, you're good to go. So he goes home, he calls another friend who does testing, and he says, were these things really cleared? And so I get this text coming back to me. It used to be he just does it silently. You release silently, you don't say anything. And what happened was he sent me this text or this email, and he says, well, you got almost everything, but you didn't get certain things on the spiritual level. And I'm thinking, levels? There's levels in this thing too? That was new to me. You got spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional. So when you think about all those different things, and the more you know, so now you've all heard me mumble those things. I release this on all levels, dimensions, realities, parts, deepest root and cause. Deepest root and cause came from Ilana Van Zandt. That was her little addition to the stuff that I released, which is kind of cool. But all levels, dimensions, realities, parts, that's the 5.5 parts of you. And then I'm sure there's other stuff out there, but I'm trying to make sure I cover everything. I don't have to say it anymore because I'm thinking it, but I think it's helpful if you understand that you need to make sure that what you specify will be affected in your release. Does that make sense? Everybody? Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Where does the energy go? Okay, so that's a great question. It can be converted to certain things. Like I used to, there's sometimes when I just know that a client is really, really down. We just released a lot of depression, a lot of negative emotions that were really affecting them mentally, a lot of will to dies type things, where if they are actually theirs. And so what happens is I will sometimes actually ask it to convert, and I will restore. I'll take that bad energy away, let it convert in the process of giving them the positives for that particular item. Does that make sense? So I usually give five emotions for each negative emotion because I've got them listed out, and that's part of the charts that I give out, when I do my classes and the Ultimate Healer stuff. But that's something to think about, that's where that energy comes from. Completely released, it's like rubbing a magnet over a credit card. That's what can happen. Now, in that book, The Physics of God, and when you get into quantum mechanics and quantum physics, a lot of times what you'll see is it just kind of blew me away. In fact, I was talking with somebody the other day about this. Anything is possible. The subconscious has so much power, but there's matter out there, and it's called matter unorganized in my mind. I dumb everything down. So this is an intelligent matter out there that is just waiting to be shaped. And I'll let you understand what I'm talking about here a little bit, because this has been an issue lately, and I want to make sure you're aware of it. So when an intelligent mind deals with this matter unorganized, anything can be created from it. It will respond. If you don't have an intelligent source on it, it will not do what you would expect it to do, because it's not being guided. But as soon as you add that to that part, it does everything you're supposed to do. And I've seen it lately create things that you are dealing with in your life. So when we talk about the monster under the bed, or the boogeyman, or the creature, or all kinds of stuff, I have some clients lately that have had a plague of evil entities. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's going on here? I released just this last week, one had 343 evil entities. That was the devils, the little devils. Now there's different kinds. They have all kinds. It's so organized. It's unbelievable. But she had created these. And that was the crazy thing. It wasn't that, we had her cleared. She had her shield. And yet she was being plagued by these because her mind was going out and creating these. So we've kind of had to deal with that issue, figuring out why is she creating that stuff. So when you talk about energies, they can be, created in a number of different ways. Okay, let's open it up for questions. Anybody got a question on this? Just unmute yourself and let me know. Completely understandable. Everybody understands it completely.
One question.
Okay.
The book, The Physics of God, you have the audiobook or the hard copy?
I have the audiobook.
Okay. I was just going to ask you if the book had pictures and if there was any reason I shouldn't get the audiobook.
Well, no, I don't know. Maybe there are pictures in it, but I have, when I'm on a long trip, I like to have something going on. And I guess that may not be the right book if you don't want to fall asleep, but it's enough for, it's written well enough that I can follow along. My wife, boom, she's gone. That's just not the stuff she's interested in. But for me, I like to see where those energies go. And when they start talking about the quantum physics part of it, I mean, that starts proving so many different aspects of why things happen. And then, why would there not be a God? Why would there not be an intelligent source? That's one of the things that I firmly believe. You think about this, and it depends on how much you know about religion and that kind of thing. But, God created this earth through the Word. Well, you've talked about that. Well, the Word is literally focusing. Now, Christ, or Jesus was the person. In my mind, if you're Jewish, it's different. Doesn't matter. The thing is that this matter unorganized is what we're dealing with here. And so when the intelligence is put together, everything is created spiritually before it's created physically. Okay, think about that part of it. So everything had to be planned out, and then it was activated, and things happened. And I firmly believe that that particular book helped me understand the quantum physics, quantum mechanics part of it. I mean, they've been dealing with quantum physics since 1950s. But nobody believed him because it was just so crazy. Einstein, it drove him nuts because it wasn't focusing on the way that he thought it should work. Now, since then, we've got people who have come up with different ways of working with it. Fortunately, it's like the cell phone. We don't have to know how the dang thing works. We just use it. As long as we understand the principles, the big principles about a cell phone. Make sure you're in cell phone in an area where you can actually get reception. You got to make sure it's turned on. You got to make sure you got power. There are things you have to do, but we don't understand why it works. And I think that's the same type of thing. Does that answer your question, Harvetta?
Yes, very good analogies.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hey, Tom, this is Pat. Can you go through how energy is converted again, or under
Sure.
what? Yeah.
Sure. I believe that, so what I do with that is it's basically any energy can be converted. I mean, that's science. I mean, you look at H2O, you look at the different compartments of that. If you change those molecules around and you change the formation, it changes it. Well, let me give you another example.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if you take a color from your wall and you take it down to Home Depot or Lowe's, they can look at it and it says, this is the hex code for this color. And they'll match it up exactly. But if you change a letter or a number in that, what does that do? It changes it to a different color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have that capability by simply asking for, you can make the changes. So is it the same energy? It's the same stuff. It's the same, made of the same type of thing. It's just reorganized in a different way. So when you're converting an energy, you can just release it into the energy, into the air. I mean, obviously it doesn't really ever go away, but it does release it from that person, and it can change how it's being used on that person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what I do a lot of times is I will remove the configuration that's bad, and I'll ask it to, and I'll just pull it out of the air, literally, and give them back the opposites. So if you have anger, I'll give you back peace and harmony and that type of thing. I've got a list of 5 different emotions for every negative.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So what I'm trying to make sure you understand is that you have the power within you, if you believe you can do it, to do it. And I've seen, here's another thing that just popped into my head. The 4-minute mile was impossible until somebody did it, right? And then all kinds of people have done it since then. A lot of times it takes somebody who doesn't know that it can't be done, and they do it, and then everybody can do it. And so what is the part that's really limiting us? It's our capability to understand and comprehend what needs to be done. Is there another question?
How do you tap on your hand?
Okay, so what I do is for me, I use my ring finger and my middle finger, and I just tap. It doesn't matter where I tap. I can tap on the table. I can tap on my book. I just do it because, and here's the thing it is, I don't have to really tap. I really don't. But I do it because it helps me mentally and physically, and it also helps my client if they're sitting, well, most of the time if they're sitting in my office, they want the back rub from the big magnet. So, but I can do that because it helps me visually think about it. Now, when that energy is released, I feel it in a couple different ways. One of the ways I can feel it, I'm an energy junkie. I love that energy thrill. And so when that energy comes out of me, sometimes it just runs right up my back and right out. And then other times it's a big yawn. And I've been asked before, how come you yawn so much? Well, that's because that energy is being released through me. So some people will actually connect to the people, and that's what I do. I connect to you, I'm running things through me. Other people don't want that, and maybe they're just too sensitive. And so they try and do the work by just testing on the person without being involved. So the tapping really is just a sign for me to see and show that I'm actually releasing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. What I'm looking for, is there a yes or there's a no, or just like a pendulum, just like the muscle release?
That's not, okay, so the tapping is not where I'm looking for a sign.
Okay.
I'm doing the tapping just to help me know that I'm releasing.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
what I'm doing, and it doesn't, Dr. Nelson says 3 times down the back will release an energy, and if it's an inherited, he goes 10 times. Okay, so what he's doing is he's placing a limit or a box around that, kinda, because what he's doing is he's the other thing he's doing is, let's see, 2 different things. He's specifying how much you need to focus on something. He's making it easy, and he's told you. Now it's almost like, if you do it 3 times, it will release it. Well, it probably will, because now that's what you believe, huh? And if you do 10 times because it's inherited, because there's more people involved, I mean, it makes sense. But is it necessary? And sometimes when I'm tapping, it's not just 3 times. I tap or I release until I feel the energy leave. Now, if I can't feel the energy release, I test to say, did it release? And it will tell me yes. You don't have to feel everything to be able to do this work. You just have to be able to test, muscle testing. I can't see angels. Some people can see angels. I can't hear angels. Some people can hear angels. Some people can see things that are going on that other people can't. That's the beauty of combining this information with your abilities and the things that you've been through. If you've had a near-death experience, for example, we find that a lot of times the door is not quite closed when you come back. You have access to certain things that you were exposed to and that changed you. And now your frequency is different, so you have access to certain things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was intrigued about what you were talking about in terms of all this sort of disorganized energy.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the intellect or thoughts that put an order to it that brings it into the reality. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
About bringing the energy into reality, like the entities and stuff?
Not so much the entities, but I was just, when you were talking about it, I was thinking about how important it is to, set intentions or to have a goal, because until you know what you want, it's all this disorganized energy, right? But then once you formulate your goal and you know exactly what you're working toward, then it's like the universe organizes everything to bring it into reality, right? Is that kind of what
Yes.
you were talking about?
Yes. Yeah. Yes and no is right. So.
Original.
Okay. Was that me? Was that an echo? I don't know what that was. It was like somebody else was answering, and I'm going, cool. This is kind of spacey. Okay. So anyway, on that, the more you know about what you want, then that's the intelligent energy that's or mind that's going to go and work with that particular matter. I mean, that's a lot more than we're going to get into right here. That's actually part of my Ultimate Healer course. So this is the main thing on this matter, on the converting. All right, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Denise.
It's not about converting the energy. It was just, you were talking about like the spoken word, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's power in your intention and power in your words.
in your words.
I was working with a young lady just the other day, and first timer, and so she was having headaches and some other issues that she was dealing with. And as we were going through, we found that it was a lot of stuff that had been said to her. She's kind of a gangly young lady. She's young, she's in her 20s, but she's really tall, and she considers herself accident prone. And so people have said things about different things, and we went back and we found what I call those despair statements and things about things that have been said about her saboteurs and different things like that. I mean, real quick, a saboteur, we always think it's somebody that stabs you in the back, but it can also be something you were taught or something that was said to you at a particular time in your life that was not necessarily true, but it affected you, it sabotaged your life. So there's a lot of different directions where that energy can go. And she came away saying, I have to be careful about what I say about people. And I'm going, yeah, because they take that and internalize it, because she had done the same thing. Does that kind of give you a little bit more? There's, usually, yeah, go ahead. Does that answer your question?
Well, it gave me a whole nother,
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
yeah.
But anyway, just realize that there's so much more to this stuff, but the limit is the limits we place on ourselves. And when we do something, when you learn something and you're able to do some kind of, you're discovering certain things, when a client comes to you, their subconscious knows what you can do for them. And that's one of the reasons why people come to me, because I'm kind of open on that. And that's the kind of the thing that I'm trying to do with this Ultimate Healer program, is make it so that that kind of stuff, is I want people to be able to have the answers to the questions that they're getting. And when they hear me and I'm going to be promoting this stuff, they are expecting a certain quality or quantity of knowledge. And so that's where I'm trying to tie those things together. Okay, so is there another question out there that we can answer real quick? These masterminds aren't normally for this much. Normally I would like to go 20 minutes to a half an hour on these, and we've gone a little bit over that. In the future, I also want to bring out some of the other things that other people are doing, so that we can kind of get an idea if there's something going on in your area, we can participate, or even have discussions on, or whatever you want. We are in the healing business, folks. Not only can we talk to kids and work with people and even little babies, but we can also work with animals. And so when we work with animals, and believe it or not, we can work with plants. So we can also make a difference on that kind of stuff. All right. Well, then we need to wrap this up. I enjoyed very much being with you all tonight. I can stop the share. That's what I can do. There we go. There we go. Okay. And if we don't have anything else, then I'll let you all go. Thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Night,
Tom. I
Tom.
appreciate it.
Hey, what do you want to work on next time? Is there